耶！今天又来录我最喜欢录的节目单元，出事了阿伯。就前面几集，你回想一下，那主题之鲜明的，一猜就猜到底来宾是谁。这个是接受比特币支付的餐厅，因为我刚刚有看到，好像整个包下来，所以我在猜想今天应该是一个非常重量级的人物，黄仁勋，对 ，NVIDIA 老板，他说来伯恩频道他很光荣，或是川普，或是巴菲特，想一个要送给印度人的礼物，现当天可买到预算5000以内，5000开得蛮高的。印度人的礼物，这个很恐怖哎！我讲什么都被演唱吧。我不行啦，我想到都很不对啦。好，我知道了，不管我讲什么都会被演上嘛，种族歧视嘛，所以我们直接拿文字来做文章。印度人，我们就送印，好不好？用印签合的印，送印章，骂不了了吧？一天之内应该做得出印章吧？可以。当天电脑可以。当然了，对啊，当然可以啊。再加送。我现在有的线索，大概就是印度人，印度几亿的喜剧演员，刚好有话题可以聊。我非常期待大家走出 Russell Peters 这样。Hello。Namaste。你好。你好，你好。
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. 印度神童，他为什么？你们打越洋电话说喂，你要不要来伯恩频道当来宾？然后他说哦，好，我想上伯恩频道这样子吗？怎么可能啊？真的吗 ？Nice to meet you.
Yeah, namaste.
Namaste.
Yes. Namaste,
how should I call you?
You can call me Anand or Abhigya. Yeah.
Abhigya. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did this all happen?
First of all, I love Taiwan a lot, and blockchain event here, the Asia Blockchain Summit, they invited me to speak at their conference regarding the future of technology overall, and I conduct regular studies into this, and I've predicted the trend of technologies a couple of times in the past. So they're interested in having a talk on the future of technology or providing an astrological perspective to technology at this talk. So that's why I was invited. Plus, we have a few astrological events and conferences here, and I just love the people and the friendliness of everybody here and the democratic values. So I love my time here.
It's so nice to have you. Is this your first time physically coming to Taiwan?
Yes, this is my first time to Taiwan.
So let's just start with blockchain, I guess. What are your predictions for, let's say, the second half of the year? Because the first half of the year, I personally saw there was kind of, it seemed like it was growing bullish. And now, like for the past, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, it's kind of dying down a little bit. Is this just like an adjustment, or what do you think?
So there is most likely going to be a correction, and then there will be growth again towards the end of the year. There is a likelihood, but I haven't studied it, the price cycles in detail. So what I was looking at is more from the use case of blockchain and where it is going to go in the next, say, 20 years or so. What are we going to see with it? Definitely, this year is very important. The second half of this year will see a great resurgence in technology once again. In the mid part of the year, some fluctuation is expected in terms of price, because price always fluctuates. But if you look at Bitcoin itself or any other cryptocurrency, it's already appreciated, you could say, infinitely to an extent. So from no value to wherever it is today, it's humongous.
I want to talk about like future possible usages of blockchain, because in the past when I was thinking about this issue myself, I thought the actual perfect usage for blockchain might be in like medical records.
Yes.
Or for like diplomas. You're not supposed to be able to change those.
Correct.
And they need to be like transferred to other places.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you see that ever becoming true?
That, of course, I think a few countries are already implementing this technology. In India, we have CBDCs coming up, central bank digital currencies. It's being used for every place where trust needs to be replaced. Where we want to replace trust with something that's more synchronous and something that's more secure. On one side, as you mentioned, medical records. Then you also have CBDCs. You also have storage of health records. And you also have a lot of things, a lot of different applications. You can even use it for governance, with decentralized governance mechanisms. So there are quite a few applications, but the only problem is that the use cases aren't catching up with the price So there's a huge gap there, and that needs to be filled.
Let's touch a little bit and start transitioning over to astrology. Is it astronomy or astrology?
It is actually called Jyotisha, the science of light and time. So that's its original name. But the Westerners call it astrology, which means the study of the stars or study of astronomical objects in relation to human existence. So you could call it astrology.
Okay, astrology. You mentioned Jupiter and Saturn being their closest for a long period,
For a long
time.
period,
And I remember you also mentioned you specialize in observing historical kind of reoccurrences. I'm kind of interested how that works. I think I read recently that you said 2025 is going to look a lot like 1968 or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that because the pattern looks similar to 1968?
It looks very similar. Astrology is a science of light and time. So we consider everything from the perspective of what we are experiencing with eyes, or what we're experiencing on Earth. In 2020, they had their closest conjunction. The last time they had a closest conjunction was in 1206. So 1206 is when Genghis Khan started his invasion from Mongolia, and it spread to Europe. Millions of people died. So from one end of the world to the other end. So you had that huge change, and that changed the climate of the region. That changed the economy of that region. So many new innovations came in. Some bad things happened, of course. Genocides happened. Some good things happened. So similarly, we are seeing another resurgence. We're going to see some negative things. We're going to see some positive things. But that was a different era altogether. This is a different era. But you would see similar great events that take place. If you look at it with an open mind, you can see patterns, 20-year cycles. So studying cycles is fascinating for me. So it's using that I've made a couple of the accurate predictions.
Okay. Can I ask a little bit more about how predictions work in conjunction with astrological patterns? Because to me, it seems like your predictions are predominantly large-scale events worldwide.
Yes.
But if we think of the common, let's say, people who study horoscopes,
Correct.
most of them are interested in what's going to happen, like personal life events. So that's one question. How do they determine big or small scale?
Big or small scale.
The second question is, how do you differentiate between different domains? For example, how do you tell that this pattern represents maybe technology or like disease or like warfare?
First of all, when you look at the study of astrology in the ancient Vedic times, you basically characterize each planet in a specific way. For example, the sun, because of its brightness, because of it being the center of our system, the solar system, we give it the most importance, and we give it characteristic of health. So if the sun in any way is having some sort of a problem, or say in the sky it is posited in any area that is not so favorable for the sun, it impacts us in a negative way. So that's analogy that is used to explain. So amongst the planets we know today, Saturn is the farthest. So because it's so far away, we give it the characteristic of sadness, depression, grief, and disease. So generally, if something special is happening with Saturn in the skies, for example, sometimes the color or the visibility of Saturn changes, we automatically correlate it to a human event, and it happens. So we don't know how to explain that scientifically, but it just happens. So I agree, astrology may not be a science in the sense of how we define science today, but it definitely has a lot of mysteries, and I've challenged a couple of people to explain it, if not in a different way. So answering the second question about how you differentiate between something big and small. So I generally make predictions about big events so that people have faith in astrology and they begin to understand how humongous the ancient knowledge was, and so that I can also challenge the present way of thinking that is very closed, I believe. It's all evidence-based. Until you show them exactly how something works, they don't believe it. But I believe there are many things that are still outside of our understanding, and we should be open. So that's the reason I've challenged it. And now, there's something called the macrocosm and the microcosm. So I generally make these more macro event predictions just so that it's verifiable. For example, I predicted the Israel-Hamas war 4 days before it happened, 3 days. On the 4th of October, I posted a video with a timestamp saying there's going to be a terrorist attack. So I publish such things so that people people gain faith in the science and in the philosophy behind the science. This is the primary reason. But you can apply those same principles to the microcosm. So the human body itself is like a cosmos within, if you look at it. Just the perspective needs to change. The percentage of water in the earth, the percentage of water, 70 to 80% there, 70 to 80% in the human body. And many things are very similar. So if the earth is impacted in such a way, then even humans can be impacted in such a way. So when you're predicting a terrorist attack, for example, I saw that the positions of the planets are aligning in such a way as to increase human anger and aggression in a certain area of the earth. So how did I make that prediction? By looking at the planetary positions, which basically, according to the ancient scriptures, say that it's going to cause anger or fear or terror. So you apply that to a group of people in that location, and it affects them. Similarly, you can apply it to an individual. There is Mars and there is Saturn. They're aspecting each other. So this person also is likely to get angry or likely to get stressed or anxious. So you can apply it both to large and small models.
That's interesting because a question I had in my mind was, it sounds as if individuals on planet Earth will kind of behave with a positive correlation to the planet itself.
Yes.
But isn't there the possibility that, let's say the planet is having like positive effects, but the individuals are not? For example, I was having a conversation with another comedian, and this has just popped up as a joke premise, it shouldn't be taken seriously. It should not be taken seriously.
No worries.
But basically, we were asking a question: are human beings really better off now than we were centuries ago? And I think the common answer is yes, because people say that, yeah, we have air conditioning now. We don't have to worry about famine as much.
Yes.
But then I came up with the counterpoint that was, but we have depression, and it's way more prevalent right now than it was centuries before. Let's say a Genghis Khan, they weren't worrying about their mental health. So I think it just substituted itself into a newer problem. But at the same time, when I was describing the whole event, physically wise, we are better off than we were before, but there are new problems in the individuals. So it seems that it's a negative correlation.
In astrology, we have these cycles, as I mentioned. So there are cycles of prosperity and decline. In the ancient times also, there were periods of prosperity and decline when people were doing very well. And there were probably time frames wherein, this may be slightly controversial, but there were probably time frames in the very, very ancient time which were more developed than the present. So if you look at the pyramids of Giza, something else, scientists are still not able to explain how you could build such things with the nutritional resources that people had at that time, lifting such huge blocks and carrying it up. Before the 1600, Europe was in another problematic cycle. It was reaching its prosperity between 1600 and 2000. But before that, it was going through horrible situations. You might have heard of the witch hunt and the lack of hygiene, which caused the Black Death.
Yes.
So all of those problems they faced, and then we faced. And again, we are coming out of it, and they are going into another cycle. We can define prosperity in different ways, but I feel it all just is very, very cyclical. Nothing stays for too long.
I'm also very curious, how many pre-existing knowledge do you have to know about, say, given subject matter to be able to make predictions and comment?
So first of all, you should have a basic knowledge of arithmetics. So it's best to have that, so that you can make some calculations. Of course, not everybody is very strong at arithmetic, but at least a knowledge of how things work is very important. Secondly, a basic knowledge of astronomy, how things work, very important. So the solar system and the stars and everything else. And then a basic knowledge of one of the scriptural languages. If you're studying Chinese astrology, you should know Chinese, of course. If you're studying Vedic astrology, you should know Sanskrit or, an Indic language. So I speak Sanskrit. So I understand the scriptures directly the way they're written. We believe in the Vedic system that there's a lot of knowledge that you can unlock if you really look inward rather than just outward. There has to be a balance. Today we look outward and we have done so many amazing things, but if we look inward, we can also do a lot of amazing things.
Yeah, wow, that's really deep. And I don't know why, it just reminded me, have you ever watched the series The Three Body Problem?
Not yet, but I'd love to.
So basically they were observing irregularities within their data, and they didn't know why they occurred, but you can only come to the conclusion that something must be there, or else they wouldn't behave that way.
True.
And so it sounds kind of like not being able to see a black hole, but you can kind of guess that there's something there.
Just pointing somewhere in the sky that there is a problem there is different from, that mathematical precision that they had. That this point to this point is dangerous. So child born when the moon is moving through this will be affected by health problems. And I see it every day when I encounter horoscopes of children suffering from different problems. So because we are surrounded, this little tiny rock, the Earth, is surrounded by so many galaxies and so many amazing things in this universe, it's kind of silly to think that we are not affected by everything. Currently we know gravity, we know a few energies. What if there are some spectrums of energy that we don't know about yet?
Yeah. Has anyone bugged you with the question of free will?
Free will, yeah. Even I myself sometimes get bewildered by that, but then I go back to the teachings of the ancient sages and see what they had to say about free will and fate. There is no difference between free will and fate. You create your destiny for the future, and you are responsible for the events that you have caused in the past. It's basically karma. With all the activities and things that I have done in my previous births, the negative effects of those I have to experience in this birth or in subsequent incarnations. And the positive effects that I have done, every single grain of food I'm getting today is because I've done something good in the past, or I have helped somebody else get theirs in the past. And if I do something wrong today, if I trouble others today, there's no getting away from that. I have to pay back for it. So it's karmic cycles, and you create your own destiny. So you have that free will also with you, but it depends on how you use it.
So the karma subject kind of made me thinking about larger collections of human beings, because we when it's an individual level, you're like, okay, so, yeah, karma, what comes around, right?
Yes.
And I was thinking about, what about countries? Are there karmas for countries?
Yeah.
There are?
It's like collective, If a group of people in a certain place, they do some negative deeds or something, and that place gets affected by those negative deeds. Like say there is one little, area, a city, with a lot of slaughterhouses, and a lot of people just keep killing animals there. So that area gets affected. And then there's another theory. All people who were supposed to suffer, they come to a specific place where suffering is supposed to happen at a specific time. Someone who has misused opportunities does not deserve to be in a place where there are good opportunities in their next birth. Something like that. And secondly, if you talk about earthquakes also, it's very similar. All people who were supposed to meet that fate, they were supposed to be there at that time as a result of their previous birth actions.
Okay. There's a question that I think is pretty selfish, but I just really wanted to know.
No problem.
Because it's been bugging me for the past few years. When do you think China would actually invade Taiwan?
Okay. I really hope that never happens, because I love this democratic spirit here. I love the people here and the way that you do things here, and it's very nice. I would never wish that to happen, but unfortunately there are some planetary positions that show that there might be some serious trouble. 2025 specifically, next year, that was one of my things, and then 2029 to 32. These are two very, very difficult time frames, and within this period there might be some time when China will actually take over administration of this place. However, Taiwan will never lose its individual identity, and people here will keep their individual identity because they're very strong about it. It has its own not only identity, it has its separate philosophy as well compared to China. So definitely this will stay as a beacon of democracy in East Asia, and I don't believe that it's going to get wiped off just because of one country that doesn't want it to exist separately.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's really uplifting. Okay, I feel so much relieved from hearing that.
Thank you.
So going back to a previous question, what I really wanted to ask was, for example, if you see or if you predict that there will be conflicts in the South Sea,
South China Sea.
South China Sea, and you're trying to pinpoint exactly which country, because I think the Philippines, there's also a possibility that they get into some conflicts with somebody else. How much of that is it always retrospective, and so you see something actually happens, for example a war, and you're like, oh yeah, so this explains what I saw previously. Or does it kind of coincide with your knowledge about the geopolitical relationships in that area to make a prediction?
Sometimes it's retrospective when I miss a prediction, and sometimes because one more popular misconception people have about me here is they think I have some sort of crystal ball and it's like magic and I can just see the future. But then,
I wanted to ask. So, would you say that your words are predictions or prophecies?
I would say predictions, not prophecies. I do not have a crystal ball, and the predictions I make are part research with data science and astrology and part intuition. There is an intuitive factor because you have so many possibilities right in front of you and you have to pick one. So there is an intuitive factor. Now, for example, recently the Israel-Hamas prediction, if you just look at that video, it's 4th of October and the 7th of October. So 3 days before, I've clearly said something like 9/11 is going to happen in the Middle East.
Wow.
So 7th of October it happened, and then that video shot up and was spread across the world. A lot of different places they were seeing it. But there are some retrospective stuff as well. For example, I predicted there will be severe danger to the world in 2020 between 2019 November and April 2020. I just said severe danger because I myself did not have a very clear idea as to whether it's going to be a disease or a war. I was more so thinking it's going to be a war because I had that data with me. The situation of the world was kind of very divided at that time. So I felt it would be a war, and hence I stressed more on a war, but I also mentioned disease. One thing was sure, there's severe danger, which has never happened before and which will happen. So we had never seen a lockdown of all the nations in the world. We had never seen the economy crashing all of a sudden, suddenly and synchronously throughout the world, which happened in that time frame. Of course, it was very dangerous. Millions of people lost their lives, but it wasn't exactly a war between countries. So sometimes I do miss predictions because I'm a human being. As a mortal, you tend to make mistakes. So I do miss some things, but whenever I do get it, I would say it's a combination of God's grace, intuitive abilities, and data science and research, and the ancient sages and what they have handed over.
Can I ask some more, I guess, personal questions?
Of course,
So having this kind of ability to predict the future, do you think it's a blessing or a curse? Because I view it as some kind of superpower. And I'm always thinking that if I had this ability, I would be able to see stuff that I'm not able to prevent. Yeah, it seems pretty
depressing.
Yeah, depressing.
I can't exactly see what's happening in the future. I only get an indication, kind of, right? For example, I've broken my tooth here. So it was a very bad accident 3 years back. I was going in my cycle. I definitely knew, I told my family members that it's not a great time for me. Probably we should just, I should just be sitting at home. But I never knew this is going to happen exactly. So that uncertainty is I like it. I never see my horoscope regularly. And I don't keep on trying to find out what's going to happen to me. I'm not anxious about the future because whatever is going to happen to me is a result of my own actions. So let it just happen.
Just a gossipy question is, do you see other people that read horoscopes and just feel like they're not telling the right thing?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
I do, very much. Because not to name anybody, but there are a lot of people who don't understand the purpose of this science and limit it to something that's very, very mundane, something that people cannot understand broadly. A lot of people are helping others, but they're not probably putting across the point that this is, in fact, greater than just reading a personal horoscope and predicting people's jobs and marriages. The reason why people have a negative opinion of astrology, many people in the world, it's changing now, but a lot of people in the world for the last 20 or 100 years have had a negative opinion. The reason is that the knowledge that the people of this science hold is very limited, and the people who study this science haven't themselves studied it very well. They misrepresent it. I sometimes cringe at it, to be honest.
Okay. Do you think it will ever be understood by science as the way we conceive science is right now?
Maybe.
It'll be solved,
Because science itself is evolving, and astrology is handed over to us from a time that is beyond history books. So many of the concepts you're talking about, we don't know the origin of these exactly. But the thing is that it will change because science is progressing rapidly, and one day science will explain to us astrology and how it worked. If you want to believe it, you can believe it. If you do not want to believe it, just look at the evidence of a prediction. If you still believe that that prediction was made with not using astrology but just using an educated guess, then you're telling that I am more intelligent and educated than the CIA and the Mossad? No way.
You can own that. You can be like, yes, I am.
I've just challenged people now, and I'd love to bring this challenge out. If someone can explain these predictions except for astrology and how it was made, then that would be great.
Kind of reminds me of, I think Chinese medicine is kind of faced with the same problem.
Yeah.
They cannot explain why you have to use this combination scientifically. But I think one day it will be solved.
One day it will be solved.
Yeah.
One day, definitely a lot of things will be solved. There are a lot of theories that are coming up gradually and they're being proven. It's going to take time. We should not lose opportunities of using this for the benefit of people.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I spread this science, and I tell people that there is something very deep in this, and you can take a look at it for yourself. I don't want anyone to be forced to believe something.
I have a final question.
Definitely.
For people who choose to believe and to study astrology, what kind of mindset do you think we should equip ourselves with if the situation is that we can't very for sure be certain what's going to happen? We can only have this kind of general picture of what the future is, and even if we do kind of know what's going to happen, don't have the ability to change it, what kind of mindset should we have?
This brings me to the answer, what is the use of astrology at the end of the day? A lot of people ask, if you know about the future now, what is that going to change? So there's a lot of things that's going to change. First of all, it changes the philosophy of life. It makes you rethink the present modern idea that everything is just arbitrary and humans just spring up and death is the only thing that's certain in life. Whereas the Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Hinduism and Vedic religion that are coming from thousands of years, they believe life goes a full circle. And astrology helps us appreciate that fact. And it also reinforces the idea of karma. And if people start understanding the idea of karma, the world can be a better place. Which is why whenever I talk about astrology, I don't talk about consultations. I don't talk about my work when I speak about it publicly. I say people need to understand karma, not just from books, but by experience. So astrology helps you experience karma. So when I talk to people publicly and make a prediction for the world, I always add this. You might have seen the local media sentence at the end. It would say, please be kind to animals in the environment, and that will benefit you in a positive way. So that's the ending message. If humans are better, then there will be no need for a lot of conflict that we cause amongst each other. If we are, friendly towards all the beings around us as much as possible, and if you're non-violent, then astrology serves that purpose of rekindling that thought.
That's a very nice message. There's so many helpful messages and things that I've never thought about before.
Thank you. It was great discussing with you, and it was so nice.
As a token of appreciation, I think we've prepared a gift for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
This is tea leaves from Taiwan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, they're from Ali Mountain. And this is a stamp with your name written in Mandarin, but it's kind of this ancient calligraphy. So we don't write this way anymore.
Oh, wow.
But it's your full name, 阿比吉亚阿南德.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So this is the stamp.
Thank you. So thank you for being so kind. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
我只是觉得上字幕的人要准备上到哭了。那音听能力，他讲话语速又快，然后用的字又难，我看你要怎么上字幕。非常非常开心，我刚刚访谈有一种那个跟唐凤讲话的既视感，真的会听到他的答案，会马上的激发我超多的疑问，然后我就会马上问出来，然后他就可以接着，然后直接聊下去。我刚刚还有一件事情很想要吐槽。就是我问他说，我在台上讲笑话，然后有冒犯到一些人啊，那个 bad karma 会不会，我要怎么绕出来？会不会永远都绕不出来？他说，听起来你讲笑话冒犯到那个是很小很小的 karma。我那时候我心里想说，你确定？你要不要先了解一下？他给我的那个回馈是说，我应该创造出来的快乐更多，所以他听起来是 good karma。有听到了吧？印度神童背书，我觉得我已经观察到这个节目帮我安排来宾的那个 pattern， 我怎么看出来呢？天上的星星告诉我的，但目前看起来是这样子哦。通常第一集是一个奇妙的人生故事，然后呢，宗教人士，奇妙的人生故事， 宗教人士，所以我已经看得到，下一次你就会帮我安排一个奇妙的人生经历，对不对？要么他职业很特别，要么他经历过一个很奇怪的事情，所以我想要找那种少年股神，有没有？他就单靠一只标股，然后几亿，现在都不用工作的那种。台湾巴菲特，我来了。